Welcome to the Adventures in Alchemy podcast, where we share tips, techniques, and true stories to support you in using the law of attraction and alchemy to create magic and live the life of your dreams. Here's your host, the founder of dailyalchemy.com, Michelle Martin Dobbins.
Hey there, it's Michelle Martin Dobbins from dailyalchemy.com, and today I want to share one of my true life stories from my life. I like to kind of share sometimes things that other people tell me or things that happen in my life that feel magical and fun. And this is just a light little story about synchronicities in the Church of Tony Robbins. I'm pretty big, actually, I don't know if I would say a huge Tony Robbins fan. I've always liked him. I listened to him back in the day, as they say, probably 15 or 20 years ago. I listened to some of his things. I think watched him maybe on PBS or something, but I bought a few of his books, but I really hadn't been following him for quite some time until he came out with the I Am Your Guru on Netflix and watched it with my oldest daughter. And by the way, I didn't realize, I don't know if I just didn't remember or if it's something that's happened over time, but I didn't realize that he uses quite the salty language. So it's a great documentary. I highly recommend it, but just be aware that the language is, he does it for a good reason, for a good effect, but he does drop quite a few F-bombs. It doesn't bother me, but I like to let people know. But anyway, so Tony Robbins kept popping up, and it probably has a lot to do with the fact that he is a great marketer, right? He's been on everybody's podcast, and I listened to him on Tim Ferriss, and I listened to James Wedmore talk about him, watching the documentary. Gosh, and he came up in a couple other different places, which was just really random that you wouldn't think of. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this, and watched it with my older daughter. And some of my other kids were kind of in and out, and, they're almost all in middle school now, except for one who's in 5th grade. And I'm sure they've heard the words. So I was like, hey, you can watch, but just remember, these words are not for sharing out in the world with everybody, but I'm a little bit laid back about things like that because I feel like I train my kids on those things. Anyway, so I watched it, and some really interesting points came up to me, but Tim Ferriss on his podcast, when he was interviewing Tony Robbins, there was a section where he did this heart-based healing process, a real short process, like 4 or 5 minutes, to connect your heart and your head and sync them up. And so my kids and I did that a few times because he broke that out. And if you want to find it, if you go to Tim Ferriss's podcast on iTunes and look, it's like 11 minutes, but really like the core of it is 4 or 5 minutes of Tony Robbins doing this. And I did it with myself and I did it with my kids. And so it was really interesting. It's a nice little process of really helping you feel gratitude and helping use that energy to solve some of your other problems in life. And my son in particular really connected with this, really enjoyed doing that process because a lot of times he's very scientific minded, and some of my woo-woo stuff is like not necessarily his thing, and that's all cool. But he really liked this process. And lately we had started going back to Unity Church, just feeling that need for connection. And so we were going to church, and a lot of times it's just like me and whoever wants to go. But it was kind of this Sunday, it just so happened that it was like, my husband was like, let's all go. So we kind of put that parental dictatorship in place and said, everybody's going this Sunday. And my son was like, oh, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to hear all that. I don't need that. He's like, I just want Tony Robbins to have a church. I want there to be the Church of Tony Robbins. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, I get that. But just, give this one a try. He might, he's like, no, I'm not going to get what he's saying. I'm not going to get it, Mom. It's not going to be good for me. And I'm like, just try it. It might be close to a Tony Robbins church. So this is what happens. Synchronicity, right? Reverend James at the Unity Church of Greenville, he's talking about spirals of life and coming back to your spiritual center. And he's going through his talk, and he comes to a point where he says, and Tony Robbins says, if you're in your head, you're dead. And if you're in your heart, you're smart. And he was like, that last part I just made up on my own. And then he proceeded to share with us the research that Tony had talked about syncing your heart and your mind, and sharing with us Tony's technique that we had been doing at home, and took everybody in the church through doing the same technique. And I just loved it because, I couldn't have made a better impression on my son that, like, when you ask for something, you ask for the Church of Tony Robbins, well, here you go. We're doing the exact same exercise. And it was kind of like to let him know that these messages can come to you from more than one place. So I just loved that synchronicity of, my son enjoying this technique, and then that technique being presented in another place that was a place that he was like, this isn't going to be right. And I'm like, just be open, just see what happens. So I think that he enjoyed it, but he still kind of gave me that little face of, I still like listening to the audios at home better. He's an introvert like me, and so it's sometimes places with a lot of people are harder to process, and that's okay. But I just was really happy that synchronicity occurred. And I don't know about you, but when you start looking for synchronicities, or myself, when I start looking for synchronicities, they just seem to happen more and more. And when you do a spiritual practice, it's like they happen. And then when you notice they happen more and more. And I realized how thankful I am for those synchronicities, because when I was kind of going through my dark night of times over this summer, the synchronicities had kind of dried up. I didn't even know that I wasn't seeing them. I'm a person, and maybe a lot of you are too, like, I'm always seeing like repeating numbers, 111, the time is 1:11 or 11:11 or 12:12 or 3:33 or 2:22, or we get that as our hotel number is room 222 or something. All those, and I take those as signs that I'm on the right path. And I have a lot of things that feel like signs to me, and that's one is repeating numbers and synchronicities and hearing the same message from different places, so I know, hey, this is for me. This is something I need to follow. And to me, it's such a gift. And so for me, it's one of those real life magic stories that some people may not take as magic. They're just little synchronicities, little things, steps on the daily path that say, hey, here's a message for you. Hey, look, this and this are the same. And for me, that's like one of the big gifts of spirituality, and focusing in on your personal growth, your connection to source, is feeling and seeing those synchronicities happen in your life. And I'm just overjoyed that they're back in my life. And if you are experiencing them, that's wonderful. And if you're not, all you have to do is start looking for them. Start expecting them. Write them down. On my website, Daily Alchemy, if you go, there's a big button that says freebies. And I think there's a link in the show notes just too. But there's what I call the Magical Freebie Vault, and it has all kinds of stuff, all kinds of PDFs and audios and lots of tools for you to work with. But one of the things there is a manifesting planner. There's a daily version or a weekly version, and you can print it out and fill it out. And one of the things that is on there is like driftwood. And driftwood is a term which means like when you see things that are kind of like on the path. Like if you're wanting to manifest a red Ferrari, you start seeing red Ferraris everywhere. That's not the universe saying, haha, everybody else has one, not you. It's saying, hey, we know you're calling this in. We're showing it to you. We're matching you up with the things that you are desiring. And it's the same, like if you look for driftwood, you'll see more. If you look for synchronicities of any kind, you'll see more. So a fun thing is to take a planner like that and jot down when you see them. And then when you look back and you save those over days and weeks and you see all the synchronicities that are occurring in your life, they just really start to add up. And they're a great way to focus on what's positive and just looking for what's coming in the future. And for me, they just are like a signpost that I'm on the right path. And for me, the right path is enjoying the moment. And there are goals and things that I want, but my highest goal is that daily alchemy. That's why I call my website Daily Alchemy. Living a life daily that feels good, that feels blissful, that feels connected, that feels like I'm of service, and feels like I'm living my purpose. And so it doesn't take a lot to make me happy. Synchronicity and seeing these little signs that, hey, yeah, I am. And that's just like part of the alchemy of my life, that my life is transformed by my thoughts, and it brings me these synchronicities. So that's my little true story of the Church of Tony Robbins. And I would love to hear what kind of synchronicities and signs and fun stuff occurs for you in your life. Feel free to send me an email, send me a tweet, post on Facebook. I would love to hear your stories of things that you have seen. And if you think you haven't, just set that intention and look for them. Look for them, and the more you look for them, the more they'll be there. So go out and have a magical day. Look for some synchronicities, and I will talk to you next time. Namaste and big hugs to you. Would you like some help creating more magic in your life? I've got a ton of freebies and goodies for you. They're all tucked away inside my magical freebie vault. You can get free access, though. You just have to go to www.dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault. Again, that's dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault. And when you get there, you can just plug in your name and email, and you will get instant access to all kinds of goodies. There are daily and weekly manifesting planners, the How to Shift Your Vibe in 5 Minutes e-kit that has audios and a workbook. There are moon manifesting planners and daily love lists and money trackers and all kinds of goodies right there. I didn't want to make you have to go to a bunch of different pages and sites and wait for certain freebies to come out. So I just took all of my freebies and put them in one place where you could just sign up one time and download any of them that you want at any time that you needed. So you can just head on over to dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault and download them today. Have a magical day.
Thanks for listening to the Adventures in Alchemy podcast. Connect with me on thedailyalchemy.com or Facebook at facebook.com/Michelle Dobbins, author. Join us next time for even more magical life tips.